Kundalini awakening. Numerous accounts. So what is this? What is it described as? Numerous accounts describe the experience of Kundalini awakening. When awakened, Kundalini is said to rise up from the Muladhara chakra through the central nadi, inside or alongside the spine, and reaching the top of the head. The progress of Kundalini through the different chakras leads to different levels of awakening and mystical experience, until Kundalini finally reaches the top of the head. The crown chakra produces an extremely profound mystical experience, and that's what they're trying to achieve. Okay? Physical effects are believed to be a sign of Kundalini awakening by some, but described as unwanted side effects, pointing to a problem rather than progress by others. The following are either common signs of an awakened Kundalini or symptoms of a problem associated with an awakening Kundalini, commonly referred to as Kundalini syndrome. So, these problems associated with Kundalini awakenings happen so often that they came up with a name for it, and they call it Kundalini syndrome. Now, what are these common signs of an awakened Kundalini? I'm going to read these. I want you to listen to them, and I want you to think for a second about if this sounds good or not. Here's the signs of a Kundalini awakening. Involuntary jerks, tremors, shaking, itching, tingling, and crawling sensations, especially in the arms and legs. Energy rushes or feelings of electricity circulating through the body. Intense heat, sweating, or cold, especially as energy is experienced passing through the chakras. Spontaneous pranayama, asanas, mudras, and bandhas. Visions or sounds at times associated with a particular chakra. Emotional upheavals or surfacing of unwanted and repressed feelings. Certain repressed emotions. Headache, migraine, pressure inside the skull. Increased blood pressure, irregular heartbeat. Emotional numbness. Antisocial tendencies. Mood swings with periods of depression or mania. Pains in different areas of the body, especially back and neck. Sensitivity to light, sound, and touch. Trance-like and altered states of consciousness. Disrupted sleep pattern. Periods of insomnia or oversleeping. Loss of appetite or overeating. Bliss, feelings of infinite love and universal connectivity, transcendent awareness. Now, you know which one is the only one that they ever mention? The last one. That's it. People say, oh, I had this Kundalini awakening. I had this mystical experience. I felt infinite love. I felt connected to everyone. I was transcendent aware. I was aware of everything. We're all one. We're just all one, and we're all connected by the energy. Right? That's all you hear. But with the Kundalini awakening, you don't hear them talking about all this other crazy stuff. Now, what's interesting about this show isn't really about this subject, but when it comes to the Kundalini awakening, I want you to go back to number 1. It says signs of a Kundalini awakening are involuntary jerks, tremors, shaking, itching, tingling, crawling sensations, especially in the arms and legs. Now, to me, this sounds awfully familiar. And what it looks like is a Benny Hinn crusade. Maybe a charismatic Pentecostal church where they're doing what? Involuntary jerks, tremors, shaking on the ground, shaking in the pews, falling on the ground. That's right. Sounds exactly like Kundalini. Now, why do you think there's so many similarities between the Kundalini awakening and charismatic Pentecostal experiences? You should think about that. Let's continue. Sir John Woodruff, pen name Arthur Avalon, was one of the first to bring the notion of Kundalini to the West. As High Court judge in Calcutta, he became interested in Shaktism and Hindu Tantra. His translation of and commentary on 2 key texts was published as The Serpent Power. Woodruff rendered Kundalini as serpent power for lack of a better term in the English language, but Kundala in Sanskrit means coiled. Western awareness of the idea of Kundalini was strengthened by the Theosophical Society and interest by psychiatrist Carl Jung. Now, we looked at all that, but now what we're going to see is the danger, okay? I want you to see the danger. We saw a little bit. We saw a preview, a little bit of a glimpse when we saw about, the symptoms of a Kundalini awakening as there's shaking and tremors and fevers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But this gets even way crazier, okay? And what I have here as well is I am going to be reading to you from primary sources, first-hand experiences of Hindu practitioners, yoga practitioners from India, okay? Not Christian sources, not someone coming up with a crazy story to sensationalize and fearmonger, but this is just straight from the horse's mouth. So you can accept it or reject it. Let's get into it. Muktananda's account of Kundalini awakening. Muktananda, who lived from 1908 to 1982, is the monastic name of the Siddha Yoga guru who was the founder of Siddha Yoga spiritual path. Muktananda was a disciple and successor of Bhagavan Nityananda. He wrote a number of books on the subjects of Kundalini, Shakti, Vedanta, Kashmir, Shaivism, including a spiritual autobiography entitled The Play of Consciousness. Muktananda's influence. During Muktananda's lifetime, he received accolades and praise from many different sources. His fame increased to the point that he was made the subject of a New York Magazine article, hanging out with the guru, and a Time Magazine article, Instant Energy, both in 1976. Time quoted a follower of Muktananda, "I don't think people come here looking for a religion. What they come for is an experience that will give meaning and substance to their lives. You don't have to believe or profess anything to be a follower of Baba. We don't become Hindus. People get whatever it is they get from Baba and their lives are changed." Okay? So, it's important to note that, this guy, Muktananda, he received accolades and praise. He was the subject of a New York Magazine article, a Time Magazine article. I mean, he wasn't some nobody. He definitely was influential. Let's continue. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who made transcendental meditation popular in the West in the 1960s, praised Muktananda, and he said, "In him, consciousness is in its own place. Not only does he flow within himself, but the world also flows with him. Consciousness constantly flows from him." So, I'm just trying to show you how important this Muktananda guy is, and that when he talks about his Kundalini experience, his Kundalini awakening experience, it is coming from a position, from a place of one of the most influential Hindu gurus in modern times. He is an authority on the subject. Muktananda's background. Muktananda was born in 1908 near Mangalore at Karnataka State, India, into a well-off family. His birth name was Krishna Rao. At 15, he encountered Bhagavan Nityananda, a wandering avadhut who profoundly changed his life. After this encounter, Krishna left home and began his search for the experience of God. He studied under Siddharahudi Swami at Hubli, where he learned Sanskrit, Vedanta, and all branches of yoga, and took the initiation of sannyasa in the Sarasvati order of the Dashanami Sampradaya. Man, sorry guys, this is getting A little bit of a tongue twister for me here. Taking the name of Swami Muktananda after Siddharuda's death, Muktananda began wandering India on foot, studying with many different saints and gurus. After more than 20 years of searching through the subcontinent of India, in 1947, Muktananda went to Ganeshpuri to receive the darshan of Bhagavan Nityananda, the renowned saint who originally inspired Muktananda's search for God. He received Shaktipat initiation from him in the early morning of August 15th of that year. Muktananda often said that his spiritual journey didn't truly begin until he received Shaktipat from the holy man. According to his description, it was a profound and sublime experience. Okay, great. Now, well, not great, but let's move on. Now, this is where it gets crazy. We're going to read a paragraph from Wikipedia to show how they whitewash what his account of this awakening, and then we're going to read the real account. Let's read Wikipedia's totally unbiased account of Muktananda's experience receiving the Shaktipat. Now, that was, I'm just using sarcasm there, just joking around that it's totally unbiased, because obviously it's so strange how they completely twisted this experience. But here it is. From Wikipedia, they say, August 15th, 1947, Nityananda stood facing me directly. He looked into my eyes again. Watching carefully, I saw a ray of light entering me from his pupils. It felt hot like burning fever. Its light was dazzling. It's like that of a high-powered bulb. As that ray emanating from Bhagavan Nityananda's pupils penetrated mine, I was thrilled with amazement, joy, and fear. I was beholding its color and chanting Guru Om. It was a full, unbroken beam of divine radiance. Its color kept changing from molten gold to saffron to a shade deeper than the blue of a shining star. I stood utterly transfixed. He sat down and said in his aphoristic fashion, all mantras, one, each from Om, Om, whatever. Think, I am Shiva, all this other stuff. Right. But anyways, that's the end. And that's all that happened. So, you read that and you go, okay, whatever, sounds kind of weird, but nothing too crazy. Doesn't sound, dangerous. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Well, that wasn't the full story. So let's read about the full story. And I'm just going to read through this and just going to get through this account that he gives. And you will see, I hope, the danger of messing around with Kundalini and trying to awaken that serpent power coiled in the base of people's spine, as they try to say. You will hopefully see the danger of that. So let's read it. And I'll show you the source at the end so you can look it up yourself. Here we go. The massive ascetic Nityananda looked like an aging TV wrestler with almost inhumanly severe eyes. The moment of power transfer had come. It took place in Ganeshpur, a wilderness village in the fiery state of Maharashtra, not far from Bombay. It was the summer of 1947, when much of India still hung between the 20th century and the ancient past. His adept, Muktananda, was about to make a timeless journey, the journey of the power yogi, the Siddha, but it required the catalytic power of the master guru, Nityananda, or Guru Dev, who was God to Muktananda and therefore worthy of worship as the supreme deity. How blasphemous is that? Very bad. But anyways, this voyage of consciousness, prized by the ancients, would split Muktananda into fragments, driving him to the limits of human consciousness. Unless superhumanly motivated, the normal person would give up at the first moment. So vast and haunting would be the terrors of the alien terrain. Perhaps the prize had something to do with this, creating the infinite desperation of the yogi, the momentum of will sufficient to pay any price to go the distance. By innuendo and teaching, he had been prepared for cosmic insanity, or perhaps even hell. Then the subtle transfer of power came. Muktananda would describe the moment. Here we go. This is how Muktananda describes his experience. He says this: Gurudev, his body close to mine, stood opposite. I opened my eyes and saw Gurudev gazing directly at me, his eyes merging with mine in the Shambhavi Mudra, a classic posture. My body became numb. I could not shut my eyes. I no longer had the power to open or close them. I watched him very attentively. A ray of light was coming from his pupils and going right inside me. Its touch was searing, red hot, and its brilliance dazzled my eyes like a high-powered bulb. As this ray flowed from Bhagavan Nityananda's eyes into my own, the very hair on my body rose in wonder, awe, ecstasy, and fear. I went on repeating his mantra while watching the colors of this ray. I stood there stunned, watching the brilliant rays passing into me. My body was completely motionless. Then the Guru made one of his characteristic enigmatic sounds, a guttural sound, and bid then prostrate Muktananda to leave his presence. A few days later, that's not the end of it, so keep listening. A few days later, the master finished the sentence with another enigmatic a severe shake of the head, and the order, go. This unleashing of energy began in Suki, a remote village in the same region. And because it gets absolutely insane, the stuff that he says happens. The process of transformation was virtually immediate. Muktananda would hold on to his unquestioning faith in the Guru like rigging as a hurricane blew through his soul, and insanity seemed a hair's breadth away. Muktananda was tapping into the power line. It was a revelation to his untutored mind. Now, listen to this. Here we go. I asked the old woman to leave and went inside my hut. I was assailed by all sorts of perverse and defiling emotions. My body started to move and went on like this in a confused sort of way. After a time, my breathing changed, becoming disturbed. Sometimes my abdomen would swell with air, after which I would exhale with great force. I became frightened. My thoughts became confused, meaningless. My limbs and body got hotter and hotter. My head felt heavy, and every pore in me began to ache. When I breathed out, my breath stopped outside. When I breathed in, it stopped inside. This was terribly painful, and I lost my courage. Something told me that I would die at any moment. I could not understand what was happening. Who was making it happen? I felt drawn towards the mango trees. As I looked in that direction, I saw Gurudev, a vision of Nityananda, sitting between them, his face toward me. Someone had seated himself in my eyes and was making me see things. Again, I looked at the mango trees. I could see Gurudev Nityananda there, and he suddenly disappeared. It seemed that I was being controlled by some power which made me do all sorts of things. I no longer had a will of my own. My madness was growing all the time. My intellect was completely unstable. Think about that. We're not done yet, but think about that. That is insane that he says, it seemed I was being controlled by some power which made me do all sorts of things. I no longer had a will of my own. That's not good. And there's the thing. Whenever we talk about the force and energy and all this stuff, it's always from the perspective, and this is one of the biggest deceptions about this subject, okay? So pay attention. One of the biggest lies that you're told is that the force, the chi, the ki, the prana, the energy is there for you to control, to tap into it. Tap into the force. Tap into the energy, the chi, and it's for you to tap into and to use, for you to manipulate, for you to control, and the witches too. Oh, you witches, you can manipulate the energy. You can control it. You're in control. Everyone's in control. Well, this extremely influential, very, very dedicated Hindu guru said it seemed that I was being controlled by some power which made me do all sorts of things. I no longer had a will of my own. Doesn't sound like he's in control of the Kundalini, of the Prana, of the force, does it? Now it had control of him. Let's continue. Muktananda entered his hut later at night. Let's continue. He said, "My fear increased every second. I heard hordes of people screaming frightfully, as if it were the end of the world. I looked and saw the sugarcane field on fire through the window. Then I saw strange creatures from 6 to 50 feet tall, neither demons nor demigods, but human in form, dancing naked, their mouths gaping open. Their screech was horrible and apocalyptic. I was completely conscious, but was watching my madness, which appeared to be real. Then I remembered death." Okay? And we're almost done. One more paragraph of that. Some pretty wild stuff. But he talks about seeing strange creatures, giants, 6 to 50 feet tall. Some other pretty crazy stuff. Then it says he sits in the yogic lotus posture. "All around me I saw flames spreading. The whole universe was on fire. A burning ocean had burst open and swallowed up the whole earth." Sounds like a lake of fire. "An army of ghosts and demons surrounded me. All the while I was locked into my lotus posture, my eyes closed, my chin pressed down against my throat so that no air could escape. Then I felt searing pain in the knot of nerves in the lower chakra power center at the base of the spine." Okay, now remember, this is all from a Kundalini awakening, right? "An army of ghosts and demons surrounded him. Felt the searing pain in the knot of nerves, the lower chakra at the base of the spine. I felt a pain, searing pain. My eyes opened. I wanted to run away, but my legs were locked in the lotus posture. Now I saw the whole earth covered with waters of universal destruction. The world had been destroyed, and I alone was left. Only my hut had been saved. Then from over the water was a moon-like sphere about 4 feet in diameter that came floating in. It stopped in front of me. This radiant white ball struck against my eyes and then passed inside me. It came from the sky and entered me. The light penetrated all through me. My tongue curled up against my palate and my eyes closed. I saw a dazzling light in my forehead and I was terrified. I was still locked in the lotus position. Then my head was forced down and glued to the ground. The night went on as other processes continued. By daybreak, a new phenomenon had taken hold. I started to make it sound like a camel, which alternated with the roaring of a tiger. I must have roared very loudly, for the people actually thought that a tiger had got into the sugarcane field. The impulse of this cryo energy possession lasted only a brief while. Now, what does that sound like, too? Making animal sounds. I have seen this happen in the charismatic churches. People walking around barking like dogs. Other sounds. The next night, his red blood cells spun like discs and glowed a deep red, coursing through his body. Muktananda said often in referring to this period, I understood nothing about the various experiences, such as the vision of dissolution and the radiant light that had come to me on the first day. Only afterwards did I learn that they were all part of a process pertaining to Shaktipat, the divine power touch of the Guru. Shaktipat is simply another name for the full grace of the Supreme Guru. This was the awakening process of the Kundalini. The serpent-like energy the yogis believe is curled at the base of the spine, and its rising upward can only be handled by a well-initiated adept, driving most people irretrievably mad, should they even get the mildest taste of it. These are quotes from Muktananda himself, taken from his autobiography titled Play of Consciousness, a Spiritual Autobiography by Swami Muktananda. And then there's added commentary as found in another book you can get called Riders of the Cosmic Circuit, The Dark Side of Superconsciousness by Tal Brook. That's definitely a good source to expose that type of stuff. But anyways, what did he say? This was the awakening process of the Kundalini. Now, it doesn't sound as fun as it's often portrayed, does it? And it didn't sound like what they were talking about on Wikipedia about Muktananda's experience, did it? They whitewashed it. But beyond him, this is the reality of it. And the bottom line is when you're messing around with the Kundalini, with this force, with the Prana, the Chi, all the stuff, you're messing around with things that you don't understand. You think you do. You think you're in control. You think that you know what you're doing and you understand it. But the reality is you really don't. You might have, and it doesn't matter. You can, you studied this. You read a bunch of books about it. You talk to gurus. You've studied your own. You've had experiences. You're like, oh, no, it's fine. Well, it's not fine. You just think it is. And just because you haven't had an experience like that doesn't mean anything. The point is that he was he wanted this, he really sought after this Kundalini awakening, this experience. And this is what can happen it's all from the same force. This is what you need to understand. The Kundalini, the Prana, the Chi, the Ki, all that stuff, it's all the same thing. And this is where, this is the type of thing that can happen from this. Not good.